that's not how it started. I didn't feel alarmed at first. I want to say that plainly. I really didn't. I remember staring at the edge of the table. The laminate was chipped there, just a thin white line cutting through the brown, like an old scar. I remember thinking, almost idly, that someone should fix that, or at least cover it with a placemat. The paper was already in front of me, not slid across, not offered, just there. My son-in-law cleared his throat, not sharply, not impatient, just that polite sound people make when they're about to move things along, whether you're ready or not. "It's all standard," he said. I nodded. I still don't know why. Maybe it was habit. Or maybe it was the way you nod when someone younger speaks with certainty, like they've already done the thinking and you're just meant to follow. The pen felt heavier than I expected. One of those metal ones. Smooth, cool, a little logo stamped on the side. I turned it once in my fingers, then again. I noticed his smile then. Not wide, not sharp, just settled, comfortable. And something inside me shifted, quietly, like furniture being moved in the next room, where you can't quite see it, but you know it's happening. I signed anyway. The pen scratched louder than it should have. Or maybe the room was just too quiet. They thought that signature settled everything. I didn't say that out loud. I didn't say much of anything. I pushed the paper back toward him. He gathered it neatly, stacked it with the others, tapped the edges straight. Careful, precise. "Good," he said. "This makes things simpler." Simpler. That word stayed with me. Before we continue, if this story resonates with you, comment below how it made you feel and where you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach more people. Don't forget to like and subscribe. After that, the conversation drifted, not away from me exactly, more like over me. They talked about timing, about next steps, about who would call whom. I watched their mouths move. My daughter leaned back in her chair, arms folded loosely, like she was relieved something had finally been handled. She didn't look at me, not once. I told myself that meant trust. I told myself a lot of things. The room itself wasn't unfamiliar. That's what made it easier. And harder, too. I'd sat at that same table for birthdays, for school projects, for late-night cups of tea when someone needed advice they didn't quite want to ask for. The light came in through the side window, catching dust in the air. Late afternoon. That slow hour when nothing bad is supposed to happen. My son-in-law stood and poured coffee like a host. Like this was all very normal. Like this was a favor. "Milk?" he asked. "No, thank you," I said. My voice sounded steady. That surprised me. They talked about the market, about how things had changed, about how people my age didn't need to worry about certain things anymore. I listened. I smiled when it seemed right. I folded my hands in my lap because they felt too exposed on the table. I thought of my husband then, not deeply, just a passing thought. He used to read everything twice, 3 times. even the fine print on cereal boxes. "Never rush a signature," he'd say. "That's where trouble hides." I almost laughed at myself for remembering that. He'd been gone for years, and this wasn't trouble. This was family. This was practical, wasn't it? The conversation ended without ceremony. No handshake, no announcement, just chairs scraping back, cups taken to the sink, someone checking their phone. My daughter walked me to the door. She hugged me quick, light. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said immediately. Too immediately, maybe. She nodded like she expected that answer, like anything else would have made things awkward. On the drive home, I kept my hands tight on the steering wheel. The radio stayed off. Not because I was thinking deeply, just because noise felt like too much. At a stoplight, I noticed my hands shaking, just a little. I told myself it was the caffeine. When I got home, I hung my purse on the hook by the door and stood there longer than usual. Shoes still on, coat still buttoned. The house felt different, not wrong, just quieter, like it was waiting for me to notice something. And even then, I told myself everything was fine. I believed that. At least, I wanted to. I didn't call anyone right away. That was the first real change. I used to reach for the phone the moment something felt off, even if I didn't know what I'd say, especially then. But this time, I didn't. I folded the papers back into the envelope and slid them into the drawer where I kept old warranties and instruction manuals for appliances I didn't even own anymore. I told myself I'd look again later, when my head was clearer, when I wasn't feeling so unsettled. Days passed, ordinary days. That almost made it worse. Tuesday morning, I went to the grocery store like I always did. Same route through the aisles, same bread, same checkout line. When I reached the register, I hesitated before handing over my card the way people do when they're expecting trouble but don't want to admit it. It worked. The relief came too fast, too strong. That should have told me something. At home, I sat at the table and wrote out my expenses on a scrap of paper. Not a budget, just a list. Utilities, insurance, prescriptions, small things that add up quietly. I noticed how many of them I didn't fully understand anymore. Not because I'd never handled them, but because someone else had started handling them for me. Slowly, politely, without asking, I tried to remember when that had begun. It wasn't one moment. It never is. It started with offers. "I can take care of that for you. It's easier if it's all in one place. You shouldn't have to worry about this anymore." At the time, it sounded like love. I folded the paper and set it aside. The kettle whistled sharp, sudden. I jumped, then laughed at myself for it. That afternoon, my son-in-law stopped by without calling. That wasn't unusual. He liked efficiency, liked doing things while he was already out. "I was nearby," he said, stepping inside as he spoke. "Thought I'd check in." He walked through the house while talking. A glance at the thermostat, the windows, The old filing cabinet in the corner, still hanging onto this thing, he said, tapping it with his knuckles. I know where everything is, I said. He smiled. That same settled smile. Of course you do. He didn't sit, just leaned against the counter, arms loose, like a man with nothing to hide. I wanted to make sure you didn't have questions, he said, about the paperwork. There it was, an opening. I could have taken out the envelope, pointed to the paragraph that wouldn't sit still in my mind, asked him to explain it slowly, out loud, without rushing. Instead, I said, "It's a lot to take in." "That's why we're here," he replied easily. "You're not alone in this. Not alone." He talked about security, about planning ahead, about how unpredictable things could be at my age. He never raised his voice, never pushed. He didn't have to. When he left, he patted my shoulder, not unkindly, almost affectionate. "Try not to worry," he said. "That's the whole point." After he drove away, I stood in the doorway longer than I needed to, watching the street. A neighbor walked past with her dog. She waved. I waved back. Life going on. That evening, I took the envelope out again. This time, I sat under the brighter lamp and put on my reading glasses. I read every line slowly. I underlined phrases with a pencil, the way I used to help my grandchildren study. The words were careful, exact. They didn't say what I'd assumed they said. They said control. They said authority. They said permanence. I noticed something else then. My name appeared less often than I remembered. And when it did, it was followed by phrases like "as directed" or "subject to approval." Approval from whom was very clear. Something settled in me then. Heavy, steady, not panic, not anger, recognition. I thought about all the times I'd brushed aside discomfort because I didn't want to seem difficult. Didn't want to be the older mother who slowed things down, who asked too many questions. I'd called that kindness. Now I wasn't so sure. The next day, I called the number at the bottom of the document. The office assistant was young, polite, efficient. She explained what she could, referred me back to the agreement when I asked for more. "Yes," she said after a pause. "Technically, that's correct. Technically." I thanked her and hung up. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I didn't tell my daughter about the call. Not yet. Instead, I started noticing things I'd ignored before. Decisions announced after they were made. Questions answered with reassurance instead of information. "You don't need to get into all that," my daughter said once, laughing lightly. "We've got it covered." Covered. Always that word. I began to understand something, not all at once, in pieces. This wasn't about one paper or one signature. It was about how easily I had stepped aside. One afternoon, sorting through old photos, I found a picture of myself from years ago. Standing in front of the house, hands on my hips, squinting into the sun. I looked capable, certain. I sat with that longer than I meant to. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I made a list. not of expenses, of questions. I didn't plan to ask them all. I wasn't ready for that, but I wrote them down anyway, in my own handwriting, in ink. By the time I finished, something had shifted. I wasn't confused anymore. I knew exactly what I didn't know. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. I didn't announce anything. That part matters. I didn't call a meeting. I didn't sit my daughter down and explain how hurt I was. I didn't spread the papers across the table like evidence and ask them to answer for it. I just stopped moving the way I had been moving. The first thing I did was make an appointment. Not with them, with someone else. The office was small, neutral. It smelled faintly of old books and coffee that had been warmed one time too many. The man across from me didn't rush. He didn't fill the silence. That alone felt unfamiliar. He read the documents quietly. No nodding. No reassuring smiles. He asked questions instead. When he finally looked up, he said, "You understood you were giving up decision-making authority, correct?" I didn't answer right away. "I understood I was making things easier," I said. He nodded. Not in agreement, in recognition. He explained what the paper actually did. Line by line. No drama, no blame, just what could be undone. What couldn't, what depended on cooperation. There were no villains in his explanation, just structure, consequences, time. When I left, my steps felt heavier, but steadier too. That afternoon, I went home and opened the old filing cabinet, the one my son-in-law had tapped like it was a joke. I pulled everything out and spread it across the dining table. Statements, letters, old notes, things with my name on them clearly and fully. I stayed there until evening, sorting, labeling, remembering. When my daughter called that night, I let it ring once longer than usual. "I was just checking in," she said. "You've been a little quiet." "I've been busy," I told her. "With what?" "With my things." There was a pause, not long, but real. "Oh," she said, "okay." A few days later, my son-in-law emailed, polite, short, asking if everything was all right, offering help. I didn't answer right away. When I did, I thanked him for his time, for his concern, and then I asked clearly for copies of everything. No summaries, no shortcuts. He sent them. Reading them took days. Some parts were worse than I'd expected. Some were less. None were what I would have chosen if I'd slowed things down earlier. I didn't try to undo everything. That wasn't possible. And by then, it wasn't even what I wanted. What I wanted was space. I opened a new account, a small one, in my name only. I redirected what I could, changed what I was allowed to change. Each step was quiet, almost invisible. At the next family dinner, nothing exploded. We ate. We talked about ordinary things. My son-in-law spoke confidently, like always. My daughter laughed, like always. But I listened differently. When a decision came up that involved me, I didn't wait. "I'd like to be part of that conversation," I said. The table went still, just for a moment. "Of course," my daughter said, a little too quickly. I didn't argue. I didn't press. I just kept doing it. Over time, the tone changed. Not because anyone apologized. Not because anyone admitted they'd crossed a line. It changed because I stopped disappearing. There were things I never got back. Control I'd handed over too easily. Trust I'd given without enough questions. I made peace with that. Slowly. What I did get back was myself. The woman who reads before she signs. The woman who asks twice. The woman who knows that ease isn't the same thing as care. They never said they were wrong. They didn't have to. The difference showed up in smaller ways. In how they checked before deciding. In how my questions were answered instead of brushed aside. And me, I stopped mistaking quiet for safety. And I stopped believing that love should ever require me to shrink.